Now everyone has their one Michael Jordan story. Now you got to give us the one Michael Jordan story.
Michael Jordan kept taking money from him. The guy lost $500 to Michael Jordan when we forced the Lakers' hand and made them make all those trades. Who would have thought that the 13th pick in the first round would end up being Kobe Bryant? The battle of the sexes, Billie Jean King versus Bobby Riggs, and he was like 60 years old, and then she beat him. The truth of the matter is, Caitlin Clark has an X on her back because people are going to want to say I stopped her. Minnesota goes in and beats Denver twice. Okay, Denver Nuggets are dead.
Leonard, welcome back to episode 2 of this new series. How'd you feel about the first episode?
I thought we had a great conversation. We got some really good information out there, covered some good material.
I think my favorite part was the story of how Kobe would not have been a Laker if that trade for Shaq had not been facilitated. So that's definitely the first I heard of that, and I think that made some of the rounds for us in the news. Apart from other things, definitely the Shaq, Jokic, and the TNT media rights that we talked about. So quite a few things, made the news and were trending on our side. So that's definitely exciting.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just never know how the dots are going to connect till after the fact.
Yeah.
So when we forced the Lakers' hand and made them make all those trades, who would have thought that the 13th pick in the first round would end up being Kobe Bryant?
With the WNBA and Caitlin Clark, in the first episode, she had her first week of gameplay. And, the Indiana Fever as a team did not have the best stretch. And she was definitely, I would say, at least affected by a more physical defense, and was more turnover prone than she was at Iowa. And you talked about this, of how the game is going to be different, right? The game is going to be more physical. The game is going to be tougher at the next level. And I think a lot of pros talked about that. What were your key takeaways watching her first week of action?
Well, I predicted most of this, and, it's been such an interesting story to watch because Caitlin Clark captured the imagination of the American public throughout the course of her late junior year and her entire senior season. I mean, she was water cooler conversation. She was breaking records. She was shooting long distance threes, and people just fell in love with her. And that was an incredible story that Caitlin Clark was able to tell leading all the way up until the championship game. Now, she fell short in the championship game, but everybody tuned in to watch and see if she could accomplish her goal of winning an NCAA championship. And the audience was staggering. As you know, over 18 million people watched that game, which was
we were watching the Final Four game, remember, on your iPad. We were all sitting around, 10 guys sitting around in a hotel in Scottsdale where there were no TVs, and you pulled out your iPad, and there were all of us crowded around watching this game, the Final Four game.
I mean, the really interesting part about Caitlin Clark's run to the NCAA championship last year was that it attracted a mass audience. Like all these guys were sitting around, basketball fans wanting to see if she could reach her goal and watching her shoot long-range threes. And it was really a really, really exciting moment for women's sports, for women's basketball. Now, you fast forward to Caitlin Clark going into the WNBA. And, if you remember, Diana Taurasi said, well, she's going to be playing against women now, so it's going to be a whole different ballgame. And the thing that I predicted was that she would be obviously successful, but there would be a lot of difficulties along the way. And those difficulties would be, making the transition, playing against a far more elite breed of player. And then everybody's going to be gunning for her because the truth of the matter is Caitlin Clark has, an X on her back because people are going to want to say I stopped her. So there's going to be a lot of folks out there trying to prove themselves by saying that they were able to steal the ball from Caitlin Clark, stop Caitlin Clark. And so she's got a little bit of a target on her back. But at the end of the day, she's a great player. She's done so much for women's sports, for basketball, etc. But at the end of the day, the WNBA is the WNBA, and you either like the product or you don't like the product. She's not going to change it all that much.
Yeah, yeah. And, staying on the topic of the WNBA season kicking off, I feel like the overlooked name here is Angel Reese. And I would argue she was as big of a star on the court as Caitlin in college, right? And now her coming to Chicago, she had made some comments targeted at both Barkley and Caitlin Clark when she said her team is winning not just because of one player on their charter flight. And that's obviously, after Chuck gave Caitlin the credit for getting them, getting the WNBA team's charter flights and bringing this new viewership to the game. But I think, Angel's done just as much as far as bringing viewership to the game. The Chicago Sky games are sold out. I think huge credit to her for that. So in your experience, do you think a comment like that is motivated through just the lens of the athlete, or are there like managers and agents and let's say PR people kind of pushing agendas here that would have her say something like that?
Well, you said a lot of different things, so I got to comment on a few of them.
Yeah.
Okay, number one, Angel Reese is really interesting and fun, and she's really good for the game. But she hasn't done anything near what Caitlin Clark has done. I mean, Caitlin Clark basically drew a mass audience and was water cooler conversation. Angel Reese was kind of her foil a little bit, so there was that rivalry. And Angel Reese is a great sort of like personality in and of herself. She's unique and special. Shaq was really infatuated with her and signed her to Reebok. And, he calls her like, she calls him like a big brother, and he calls her like a little sister or whatever. So, there's a real bond there. And she has become a star in and of her own right. A little bit of a maverick out there. And she says certain things, but I think people are making too big of a deal of it. I mean, who cares? And by the way, Caitlin Clark did not get people the charter flights. Okay, that was something that the WNBA players have been lobbying for. And Caitlin Clark hasn't really done anything to create more value from the standpoint of media rights and all that other stuff that ultimately will result in higher WNBA salaries and more benefits, etc. She's definitely going to be a big part of the growth of the league, and hopefully it'll be a catalyst for future growth. But it hasn't kicked in yet. So the fact that she signed with the WNBA didn't really do anything to create like charter flights. So I think, Charles Barkley was a little bit, overstepping when he said that. But at the same time, I think her comments were like much ado about nothing. It wasn't really that big of a deal.
No, I love you clearing, giving us the facts there, because I think it's these misconceptions run pretty wild, right? When you have a big personality like Chuck saying that on a big platform. But, kind of putting yourself in the shoes of, let's say, Caitlin's, manager, agent, like, how would you advise her on like dealing with these comments? Because it's not just Angel, right? It's like a lot of people are coming at her with these comments. Like, is it even worth a response? Like what do you think she should be doing?
I mean, I think her agents, or I think Jeff Schwartz and the XL company have done a really nice job with her. Obviously, she's got a lot of great marketing deals that are lucrative and far in excess of her $89,000 WNBA salary.
Yep.
But she's done a pretty nice job with the media, and I wouldn't comment on any of these things if I were her, and I don't think she has. I think she can just go out and play, be gracious, humble. I think she's handled herself very, very nicely.
LeBron earlier in the week talked about how he's so happy, right? Caitlin is bringing new people to the sport.
The one thing that I love that she's bringing to her sport, more people want to watch. More people want to tune in. I saw for the first time that they had a chartered plane.
Obviously there's backlash to this where people are saying he could have said this a long time ago, or he could have pushed more fans right towards the WNBA. to bring more attention. So it's like, what's your assessment on some of that criticism coming on LeBron and even other, right, NBA All-Stars, media personalities that are just now talking about the league but never had a voice or opinion before?
Well, I think what LeBron said was perfect. I mean, I think it's ridiculous for anybody to criticize him for saying that. He's just trying to say that he congratulates her on creating more visibility for women's basketball. If you think about it, women's sports, for the most part, does not attract a mass audience. It's basically niche audiences, except for World Cup, except for maybe the Olympics, and except for Caitlin Clark. Other than that, you don't get mass numbers watching sports. I mean, you said it best earlier, Vishal. We were all huddled around an iPad in Scottsdale, Arizona, watching Caitlin Clark play in the finals of the NCAA tournament this year. So I think what LeBron said was perfect. You know, don't criticize people for, you know, noticing now that women's sports is gaining momentum. You know, I think people in our culture sometimes tend to want to judge everything everyone is saying, and I think we need to stop that.
How internally athletes deal with getting to a new situation and struggling out the gate, as this is pretty common, right? I would say even the high draft picks in the NFL, NBA, whatever have you, definitely have their growing pains. And I'm sure you've dealt with this, if not with Shaq, with other athletes. How can you walk me through how internally, you know, some of these discussions go, whether it's, you know, with the agent, family, friends, like how's the athlete feeling in these situations, and like what are the things that they depend on to kind of get out of these slumps?
So just remember that even the greatest of all time struggled at the beginning in one way, shape, or form. I mean, you could still see their talent. Their talent was undeniable, but there was often a lot of losses, a lot of disappointments, and you have to persevere along the way to get to the point where you are truly great in the sport. I mean, think about it. It took Michael Jordan 6 seasons to win the championship. I mean, he didn't come out and start winning right away. It took him a long time to get there. Once he got there, you couldn't take him off the top of the mountain, but it took him a long time to get there. He had to persevere. He had to continue to go and push through adversity, and he was able to do it. Same with Shaq. It took him a while to get to the point where he won championships, and then he won 3 in a row. So if you're a great player, if you're really talented, you're going to have your ups and downs. You have to persevere. You have to have resilience. And then ultimately you get to the top of the mountain. And I'll tell you, once you get to the top of the mountain, it becomes infectious. And you don't want to get off there once you get up there. So it'll be really interesting to see the progression of Caitlin Clark. But all the greats managed to push through adversity and get to the promised land.
Any specific locker room discussions or talks you remember having with somebody you managed who was kind of going through those growing pains?
Yeah, so I can remember when Shaq was with the Lakers and they ended up losing 4 straight to the Utah Jazz. I think it was one of his first years with the Lakers. Kobe Bryant shot air balls in the
I was
last
about to
game,
say
and
that I remember the 2 air balls in the last game.
Yeah, and so Shaq was so pissed, he didn't want to talk to the press. And he said, I'm not talking to the press. And so he started to come out of the locker room and I go, look, hold on. You need to go back in there and face the music. You know, you have to face the adversity on your way to the promised land. You go back in there. And, you know, a lot of people are like, well, how could you, you know, go and tell him that when he didn't want to go back in there? But it's our job as an agent, as a representative, to try to push them in the right direction, to let them know that every single thing that they want to do might not necessarily be the right response. Their knee-jerk reaction might not be in their best interest, and it's your duty to jump in and try to coach them and, you know, and try to counsel them the right way. And, you know, to his credit, he turned right around, faced the music, faced the press, and, you know, just said, look, next year's going to be different. And it was.
No, I mean, talk about the beginning of kind of building this bond. I feel like between Kobe and Shaq, right, and the evolution of the Lakers, is a lot of people don't remember these moments. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's really important for the team fabric to have these moments of adversity, and that kind of gives you that spark and motivation to overcome.
Oh yeah. So, there's a lot of intricacies that exist on a team because you're managing a lot of big egos, a lot of people that think they're the best in the world at what they do. So it's an art form. It's delicate, and you have to manage it the right way. And there's certain people that are capable of doing that, and there's certain people that aren't capable.
Do you remember the first time that Shaq and Michael played each other, and any conversations you had with Shaq before that? As Shaq even says back, he was definitely starstruck playing Michael.
Yeah, I mean, everyone revered Michael. I mean, he was so amazing at what he did, and clearly the best in the game. And so, Shaq was obviously one of those same people that revered him. And I think one time they were playing, and Shaq knocked him down while he was going to the basket, and I think Shaq went to help him up, and Michael goes, "Don't help me up." Don't help me up. Like a real, you shouldn't be helping up your competitor because you want to beat them. And Michael was the most competitive person in the world. I mean, everyone will tell you that. But, Shaq was able to actually beat him, and the first one to beat him after he'd won a championship when Chicago played the Orlando Magic as the Orlando Magic got to the championship game. And they were absolutely elated. It was almost like they'd won the championship when they beat Michael Jordan, and they kind of, I don't want to say they let down when they played the Rockets, but it was almost like an afterthought to play the Rockets after they beat Michael Jordan.
Fun question. I got to put you on the spot with the current state of the Lakers and how I know, obviously you're an LA guy and are down in LA. What do you think of the job Rob Pelinka's done so far? And then two-part question to that: if you don't like it, do you think you could do a better job in that front office?
No, I don't think I can do a better job.
Good answer.
The interesting thing is that there is more influence now that athletes have than ever before. The superstars have so much influence on what the front office does. And the NBA is built on star power. And star power drives revenue for the teams. Los Angeles is probably at the epicenter of all that because remember, they started with Showtime and Magic and Kareem, and the stars would show up. And the stars of LA and the stars of the entertainment and music business want to see stars on the court that they recognize, that they admire, that they revere. So, Los Angeles has LeBron James, who's the biggest star in basketball, and he has tremendous influence over what the Lakers do. So Rob Pelinka has a really difficult job because he's got to listen to his own heart, listen to the analytics, listen to the star of the team. It's a tough job. And you remember he and Magic Johnson had a little bit of a falling out, over who was making the decisions and who had the authority. And I wouldn't want that job. But
no.
I think that if you had to grade him, he's been successful on some levels and not so much on other levels. So I wouldn't be able to do a better job. And he's got a tough, job going forward, especially as LeBron is at the sunset of his career. So he's certainly not the same player he was, let's say, 5 years ago. At the same time, his star power has never been greater. So it's a really interesting time for the Lakers right now.
Now, I know, obviously, you haven't been part of a front office, but would love to get your thoughts on any experiences you've been, obviously, with Lakers, Magic, with Shaq, Hakeem, Kareem, where you've seen front offices make some pretty big moves, I would say, like in the mid-season where the team, let's say, was not great and then kind of propelled them to a championship. Like anything stick out to you remembering in the past when you've seen great front offices?
Well, I mean, if you think about great front offices, the first person you think of is Jerry West. Jerry West, if you remember, orchestrated the Magic Kareem dynasty. Jerry West, orchestrated the dynasty with Shaq and Kobe. We talked about the way that all came together. Jerry West helped Memphis put their team together. He went and consulted with Golden State and helped them put that whole thing together. So, I mean, he was sort of the mastermind of the old school of, general managers and putting teams together and doing things of that nature. Today, things are a little bit different because there's many more GMs that are out there, many more people who are from the world of analytics that are coming into the front office, and you're seeing AI take, shape in the form of, front office influence. So, how are players drafted? How are players traded for? There's a lot more data and analytics that go into that now. It's really become sort of this art form of sort of heart and science, and it's an interesting mesh because who knows more, the one with the business intuition, the coach, the people that have been around the game for a long time, or do you depend more on pure hard stats? I mean, I know we've seen this in baseball before when they pull a pitcher off the mound. They go, "What are you doing pulling him off the mound? The guy's pitching perfect." The stats say you got to pull him off the mound. Then the next player comes up and hits a home run. You go, "I told you should have gone with your gut." But it's a really interesting, delicate dance. And wow, sometimes you just don't know how a group of players are going to blend until they get on the court together. So, God bless those that have been able to figure it out. And I think the ultimate, guy that stands at the top of all this is Jerry West.
Now, I know it's obviously with social media, it's a lot different when you were dealing with these big athletes back in the day, trying to facilitate trades and acquisitions. Did you ever use like insiders or reporters in order to kind of send a message or like kind of get a client out of a current team or facilitate a trade? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the media is always going to be a tool that you use because it influences public opinion. And you want to have good relationships with the top reporters, and they want good relationships with you if you're an agent or a representative because they want to get the inside information. I mean, I can remember so many different reporters back when I was representing Shaq and others where they would always be calling me and asking me if there was anything new, anything inside. And if they saw something happening, a dynamic on the team, they wanted to get the backstory, the inside information. I can even remember, Jeff Bezos's fiancée, Lauren Sanchez, used to be a reporter in Los Angeles. And she was always like trying to get scoop and everything that was going on, during that period of time. So it's nothing new. It's just a situation now where there is so much more interest in what's going on behind the scenes, and the stories are deeper and more intricate, and there's a lot more detail than ever before. So there's a lot more reporting done than even back in the day when I was representing Shaq and others. So it's an interesting time. And I think the media has tremendous influence, but at the same time, you're not going to tell them anything that hasn't been discussed with your client before.
Yes. Well, that's crazy. The Lauren Sanchez connection there. I did not know she was a beat reporter. Wow.
Yeah, she used to be a sports reporter, and she was in the locker rooms, and she was always, getting inside scoop on everything.
The NBA playoffs, right? It's like we're pretty deep in right now, and the Boston Indiana series is over, but we still have an active one, right? In the Timberwolves and the Mavericks, going into a Game 5 today, right? And tonight, Thursday night. People will probably see this after in the series, so we'll know who wins. Actually, let's get a prediction. Do you have a prediction?
Well, these playoffs, I've never seen such momentum swings in my entire life. I mean, it's crazy. If you think about the Denver Minnesota series, Minnesota goes in and beats Denver twice. Okay, Denver Nuggets are dead. Then Denver goes in and whips Minnesota twice, wins 3 in a row. Oh, the Timberwolves are dead. And then all of a sudden, the Timberwolves win 2 in a row. Oh my goodness, they won the series. So then you go back and you see what's going on here. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, no one in the history of the NBA has ever come back from 3-0. Now it's 3-1, but every game has been incredibly close. So you don't know what's going to happen. It's really in the air. I think, Charles Barkley said, I think, a really interesting he made a real interesting observation. What Charles said was, well, when they go back and they play the next game, if the Mavericks don't win, then the following game is a must-win for the Mavericks, because otherwise they'll be going back to Minnesota for the final game.
Yeah.
So it'll be fun to see how this is. It's going to be really fun to watch.
Sticking to this big Mavs Timberwolves series, we have obviously the evolution of Anthony Edwards, right, in the mainstream, and not only him being on a lot of these big brand commercials, I always see his Bose commercial during the games, but the whole movement around the Michael Jordan comparisons, right, this early in the kid's career, is it good for him to lean into that narrative, or is it more beneficial for his brand to kind of say, like, I'm Anthony Edwards, like, I don't want these Michael Jordan comparisons, like, I'm my own person, I'm my own brand?
I don't think, to me, I don't think he has to take the bait on it. If people want to compare him to Michael Jordan, let him. All he has to do is say, Jordan is one of a kind, and I have ultimate respect for him. I mean, I think Anthony Edwards is sort of a different kind of guy, fun, young, certainly youthful in so many different aspects of his personality, explosive and incredibly fun to watch. So it'll be interesting to see how his career evolves. He hasn't gotten to the promised land yet. He certainly is looking forward to getting there. I don't know if it will be this year, but if he perseveres, if he stays healthy, he could have an incredible career. But you don't know. I mean, look, people get injured sometimes. You never know. Look at Blake Griffin. The guy was like a monster, and then he had those injuries and really did debilitate him. And he wasn't able to do
Grant Hill.
Grant Hill, Rose,
big one.
There's a lot of people that have suffered injuries, especially high flyers, and you've seen some of the things he's done, and it's scary. I mean, he's falling on his back, blocking shots, and you're wondering, is he okay? So let's just see how this thing evolves. But certainly, he's super fun to watch. He's a charismatic kid, and he's underneath it all, even though he's a little bit effusive in his show off stuff, but at the same time, I think he's got a good heart and he's a good kid, and people really like him.
No, great point. I mean, so likable, and I'm just looking forward to seeing him play. Right, I just want this series to go longer, so we can get just more Anthony Edwards highlights in there. But even on that comparison, right? It's like I remember when Shaq was always being compared to Kareem, right? And it's like you're in a unique position because you work with both of them, right? It's like what do they actually think of each other and those comparisons, because you kind of have it from both sides?
Well, it's really interesting because I had at one time 3 of the greatest big men to ever play the game. Kareem-Abdul Jabbar, Akeem Olajuwon, and Shaq. And they were all amazing. And when Shaq first came into the league, we organized a Reebok commercial, which was absolutely unprecedented and epic. So it was a rite of passage commercial, and we got together the greatest group of centers in history. We got Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem-Abdul Jabbar, and Bill Walton, rest in peace, in one commercial, along with the great John Wooden. And it was really an amazing commercial, an amazing spot. I introduced Kareem to Shaq when Shaq was at LSU. And I'll never forget one game, Kareem and I went down to LSU to the house that Pete Maravich built where Shaq was playing a game. After the game was over, Shaq came out and Kareem said, "Son, let me show you the skyhook." And on the court of the Maravich Center, Kareem-Abdul Jabbar showed Shaq how to shoot a skyhook while he was still in college. And it was a really fun, interesting moment to see those two out there. Nobody was there but me. I think Coach Dale Brown was there, maybe the janitor. And those two went out there after a game and played basketball together. And it was a sight to see. But Kareem wanted to mentor him, wanted to push him. And Shaq always comes out and says, those big guys pushed me because they wanted me to be my best. And sometimes I would resent it, but in retrospect, I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So from an outsider's perspective, I would say that almost motivates a great like Shaq and a competitor to be better, right? And kind of use that as a measuring stick. And I would say even in Kareem's lens, like I remember when LeBron broke the scoring record and Kareem was front row, right? Clapping, happy for him. Like it's what an accomplishment to break his record. But I feel like there's mutual admiration between big men that have kind of gone through this journey and have achieved like these high levels.
Oh, no doubt. And there's also this little bit of motivation that they put out there. And, you know, we talked last week about Shaq being a little critical of certain athletes and people criticizing him for being critical. And you know, Shaq's motivation was, in fact, to prod them into being a better player, to prod them into being the very best. And that's what Kareem would do to Shaq, and a little bit Walton would do that to Shaq. And Shaq has acknowledged that and said, look, they prodded me, they criticized me. I was mad about it, but looking back, I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. And now, you know, I know you have a relationship with Shaquille O'Neal, right? Shaq's son, and obviously the family. Do you think that carries over to his family, where Shaq is, you know, actively training with them, let's say even helping them on certain initiatives, whether it's business, getting a better deal on a contract, things like that? Like, how do you see that?
Yeah, Shaq is an active dad. I mean, he trains Sharif in basketball. He cares deeply about his daughter, Miara, who's a great basketball player, getting ready to start at the University of Miami next year. So he is a mentor to his kids. He's tough on his kids. He's not one of those parents that go easy on him. He doesn't spank him or hit him like his dad hit him, but he still comes from that old school where you don't want to baby kids too much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now, I mean, another top story sweeping the mainstream media is Rich Paul's comments talking about Bronny's NBA draft declaration, right? And Rich, you know, clearly coming out and is giving his thoughts on Bronny even potentially being drafted in the first round. And, you know, from an objective lens, it's like, you know, Bronny probably needs a little more time in college, I would say, to achieve that level of scouting, right, and draft position. Did you have any thoughts on what Rich said, or even kind of the prospect of a team drafting Bronny to get LeBron? Like, is that a serious motivation, or is that just stuff the media is kind of running with?
Well, I mean, look, Rich Paul's job is to represent his client and protect their interest as much as he can. So that's what his comments are designed to do. So there's nothing wrong with that. You know, that's something that, you know, you have to respect. In terms of, you know, LeBron James's son, Bronny, and his future, you know, he's going to have to perform on the court. I mean, that will determine his future and how far he goes. If his father wants to play with him and a team thinks that will help them secure LeBron, if they really, really want him, then that will be part of what they take into consideration when they draft a player. But I don't think they're going to draft him if they really think he can't play, just because they hope to get his dad. But it seems like he's a pretty good player, and it's really difficult to know right at the moment how far he can go, because he hasn't had a chance post his heart situation to really, you know, have a good run that you can see from a consistency standpoint. Apparently, he did really well in the combine, in the you know, pre-draft workout. That was the report that everybody was giving, and he did really, really well. So that's great, and we'll just see how it unfolds. It'll be interesting. There's never been a situation. There's never been a situation quite like this.
I was gonna say, as a Suns fan, there's all these reports of Bronny only doing a workout with Phoenix and the Lakers, and the Suns have the 22nd pick, and the media is running rampant with like, this is the way Phoenix can get LeBron to sign a vet minimum and things like that. And I know it's fun for a fan base, but I think when you're part of the business, right, and you're actually looking at it from that standpoint, I think that's so outlandish, right? It's like they're not in the business of just handing out these contracts and making these moves if you can't play and seriously contribute on the team.
No. It's interesting, though, when they talk about LeBron signing a minimum contract. I mean, the good news is LeBron doesn't need the money. So
I was going to say, yeah, I could definitely see the motivation from the fans getting excited, because I was like, yeah, I don't think he's going to care too much about that salary difference. But hey, I don't want to count somebody's pockets. I heard he's still he doesn't pay for Spotify Premium, and he's very frugal.
So maybe he's one of those people that is just really cautious financially. I can't really speak for him.
No, yeah, 100%. So we've obviously talked a lot about basketball and the current stories that are in sports. Would love to shift more to our sports business segment, right? Like I think we had a lot of fun with that one last time, and I want to focus on boxing, especially with the Jake Paul and Mike Tyson fight coming up, right? Mike's 57 years old and fighting Jake. Like obviously there's a big payday in it for him. What do you think is the risk worth the reward here for a 57-year-old like Mike kind of stepping into the ring here? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, our culture is obsessed with celebrity, and you see more and more and more. I mean, you can have a celebrity playing golf and they'll watch, a celebrity playing pickleball and they'll watch, and now you have celebrities fighting each other, so they're probably going to watch. And Tyson probably got a ton of money to do this. Now, Netflix, I believe, is going to show this fight to all their subscribers. So they're probably looking at this as an acquisition vehicle. Yep. How do we acquire more subscribers who want to watch this fight? And that's something that's really interesting. They've done a brilliant job with they did that Brady roast, and that got great reviews. They did the celebrity tennis match, and that did really well. I mean, they've done some really interesting things now in the live sports space. But from Tyson's perspective, I just think for him, it's an opportunity to get out there, get incredible exposure, and he probably wants to fight because he's doing it. So he's become, sort of this really well-liked guy who's gone through a metamorphosis in life. I mean, when he was destroying people, he had a killer mentality. I don't know if he still has the same killer mentality, but we'll see.
No, I think you're spot on, and I think especially I can see clearly the motivation for someone like Jake, right? Who he's a kid and he grew up watching Mike Tyson, and the fact that he could fight him and potentially beat him, like just for his brand and himself, his pride personally, right? It's like you can walk around and say you beat Mike Tyson in a professional boxing fight. Like who wouldn't want to take that opportunity if you were Jake, right?
Well, he's 57. Also, I mean, it's not like you beat him in his prime. Mike Tyson in his prime would. Oh my gosh, True. I didn't even want to about what would happen. But 57.
We don't want to talk about that.
You slow down a lot at 57, so we'll see. Sure. It's kind of like with the battle of the sexes, Billie Jean King versus Bobby Riggs, and he was like 60 years old, and then she beat him.
So I know we touched on this last week, obviously with the TNT and the media rights negotiation, and it's like since we last spoke, we've definitely learned a lot more, right? Especially with Charles Barkley talking about how he wasn't happy with TNT prioritizing college football, right, and sacrificing the NBA rights in this process, as they could have used that money to obviously retain the rights. Do you think that was a good decision to choose college football over the NBA and what they've already had with the NBA for this long?
I don't think they chose college football over the NBA. If I had to speculate what David Zaslav was thinking, it was, I'm going to bid 1.25 billion and try to get the deal for that. If it doesn't work, then someone might bid a little more, but I still have the matching right. So he knew he could match any offer. But the interesting thing is that matching rights are not as powerful today as they used to be, because there's so many different ways to avoid them. So, for example, the competition is between NBC and Warner Brothers Discovery.
Yep.
And NBC has an over-the-air network, which can guarantee wider distribution. And that's something that could be a point of differentiation. I mean, people are saying that this might end up in court, because let's say NBC bids, because if NBC bids 2.5 billion and Discovery decides, okay, we're just going to match it, and because we need the NBA for various reasons, then what ends up happening is that NBA might say, well, we want over-the-air network and we want to take the NBC deal. And as a result, they'll say, well, you can't match over the air. And there could be a big, big conflict in terms of the way that this thing comes down. So you might see this whole thing end up in court, and the negotiations aren't over. It should have been over a while ago, but it's not over yet. So there is some uncertainty going forward. So let's see what happens. It's going to be very interesting.
That's what a crazy situation. And correct me if I'm wrong, but is this a situation where like Charles Barkley and Shaq could even just co-produce inside the NBA themselves? Let's say bring it under a production company. What if Netflix or another platform hosts it, and they have everyone tune in before, after a game to their live stream, right? Could it even be a Shannon Sharp, Chad Ochocinco situation where they're just streaming their thoughts after the game and it kind of takes a life on its own? Like, those are always the thoughts I have when seeing. No.
I don't think so. I think Barkley saying that was sort of out in left field.
And
let me tell you why. Inside the NBA is a big production, and it's an expensive production, and it takes up a lot of time on TNT and gets a lot of advertising support. So you have to pay these guys a whole bunch of money to be on that show. And TNT generates a lot of revenue because of that show. So Shaq, Charles, and Kenny, et cetera, need a big platform, a big distribution platform to justify the scale of the compensation, of the production. So I don't see them doing this little alternative cast that they would put out on their own. It just wouldn't be enough money and enough distribution to attach to it. I could see Adam Silver saying, NBC, if you want this deal, I want you to take this crew as is. Now I know that I think it was Ernie said he's not going to leave TNT no matter what. He's going to retire there because of all these years. But Shaq and Charles and Kenny, that's a pretty good trio right there.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. It'll be really interesting. And it could be very exciting.
Now, I think we talked about, we mentioned Bill earlier, and Bill Walton. And obviously, I know you've known Bill, and I think a lot of the NBA community, the basketball community, has talked about his passing now, as he was, an icon in the game. And I would say, just as an ambassador of the game, to me, that's the best way I would describe Bill Walton, because I would not only see Bill on NBA broadcasts, the Pac-12, him calling Pac-12 games, and it's very crazy timing with the Pac-12 not being the last season of the Pac-12, and rest in peace, Bill. He was able to see the last season of the Pac-12. I know you had posted about it, and you've spoken about this a little bit, but would love to get your thoughts on how Bill impacted your life and maybe some fun interactions you had with Bill.
Oh, yeah. So Bill Walton, for anybody that saw him in college, that guy was unbelievably dominant. The most dominant college player by far, with the exception of probably Kareem-Abdul Jabbar. For Kareem, they had to change the whole rules of the game. They didn't allow dunking because he was so incredibly dominant. But Bill was incredible. I mean, he was, I think Kenny Smith said he was like the Jokic of his time. He could pass, he could do all kinds of stuff on the court. He was such a great player. He was also an activist. And, the funny thing is he had all these run-ins with John Wooden when he was a player, cut your hair, wear a tie. And he was always had big conflicts with John Wooden, his coach. And then, after he left UCLA, of course, he realized how incredible John Wooden was and revered him. And they developed this very, very close relationship. But Bill Walton used to stutter. I don't know if you knew that, but
Really?
he could hardly talk with him, stuttering a lot. And he finally got his stuttering cured. And he said one time he had an operation, John Wooden visited him in the hospital. And he said, Bill, I'm so glad that your stuttering got cured. It's a curse. It was a blessing, but also a curse. It was a blessing because you got your stuttering cured, but it's a curse because you never shut up. And the truth is, Bill Walton, I'll tell you, I've emceed events with him before. And once you give Bill Walton the mic, you will never get it back. I mean, he will go on and on and on and on and tell story after story. And it's all good-hearted. He had a beautiful soul, a beautiful spirit, always treated everyone with respect and dignity, and always was so complimentary. And I love the guy. And he would do things for charity all the time. So with the passing of Bill Walton, we lost a great individual, an incredible basketball player, a great spirit, a great soul, and someone that really was a fantastic example for how we should treat other people.
No, I mean, you brought up so many great points there about Bill's personality, I would say, on and off the court. But I think the important part you brought up is the Jokic thing and how he was Jokic before Jokic. But I think a lot of people my age don't understand how dominant of a player, and I would say IQ, Bill actually was. And, talking about basketball IQ, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like nowadays in the way we teach the game, that is lost on a lot of players, especially big men.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, he was incredible. He could get a rebound, throw the ball the length of the court. If you passed it to him, he was always looking around for the open man. If you fed him the ball, he always took a high percentage shot. He just had super high basketball. And he could do one thing Jokic couldn't do. He could block shots. He was a rim defender. I mean, the guy was, you didn't want to bring the ball in near the basket with Bill Walton there because he was cat-like quick. And he could just get out there and block your shot before you even knew it.
Would you say he's a better all-around player than Jokic is now?
I mean, it's hard to compare like that.
It's hard to compare.
Really.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, until he got injured, he was amazing, extraordinary. He was phenomenal. When he was in college, he was literally unstoppable on both ends. And you could not go into the paint. He would just block every shot. Yeah. And so, he was a pretty incredible player, I got to say.
Now I got to go watch the tapes of those UCLA. I hope they have tapes, but it would be nice to go and watch them.
Go back and watch him. I mean, I think he put on two of the most dominant performances in NCAA finals history, winning 2 back-to-back championships. I remember one game he was 21 for 22 from the field. Imagine that.
Wow.
21 for 22 from the field with like 18 rebounds or something. I mean, the guy was amazing.
That's insane. And happy for you to shed light on that, because I don't know how many people are actually talking about this on a national platform, right? In terms of actually knowing Bill the person and Bill the player. I love that. And I think a good topic to end on, which I realized I missed this question before, but we were talking about Shaq and Michael Jordan. Now everyone has their one Michael Jordan story. Now you got to give us the one Michael Jordan story you remember from an interaction with him.
All right, so I'll take you back to the USC Texas football national championship game at the Rose Bowl. Reggie Bush,
okay.
Vince Young, and I'm in the Gatorade suite. Now, in the Gatorade suite, I'm in there with my wife, Holly McPeak, 3-time Olympian, bronze medalist in beach volleyball. And in that suite, it was a who's who. It was Magic Johnson. It was Lance Armstrong. It was Sheryl Crow. It was Nomar Garciaparra and Mia Hamm. It was Matthew McConaughey. It was unbelievable who was in there. Danica Patrick. We're all in the Gatorade suite, and in walks Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, he had a bottle of Grey Goose. He used to like have a couple of drinks of Grey Goose. So he always liked to bring his bottle. And I knew him a little bit, because he knew I represented Shaq, and we had a very respectful, nice relationship. So he comes up and stands next to me, and everybody knows he likes to make little wagers. So he's like, hey, you want to bet on, a little bit on this game? And, he liked to bet on plays. He'd like to not just like who's going to win the game. It would be like, okay, they're going to make a first down. Are they going to throw a pass? I mean, and I said, no, I don't bet. But the guy next to me, I had snuck him in. And he was our announcer on the AVP Beach Volleyball Tour. He's currently the host for the Lakers. His name is Chris McGee. And so I snuck him into the suite, and he was like infatuated with all these incredible stars in the suite. And he was standing next to Michael Jordan. And since I didn't bet, he looked at him. He goes, you want to bet? And he goes, okay. And he goes, I got $100 that they convert this third down. And Chris McGee, Geeter, they called him, said, okay, $100 that they don't convert the third down. They converted the third down. Michael Jordan grabs the $100 from the guy and laughs and scream like he'd won the NBA championships. He was so happy. Then they bet again. Michael Jordan kept taking money from him. The guy lost $500 to Michael Jordan, and nothing massive. So I go and walk into the bathroom, and my guy comes next to me. He goes, this is the greatest day of my life. I just lost $500 to Michael Jordan. He was so happy. But Michael Jordan was so happy to win $100 from a guy as he was to win the NBA championship. He was just that kind of person. But he was so gracious and so nice, and it was really fun hanging out with him.
So those stories of the competitiveness, those aren't overblown when they say like Michael just wants to win everything.
Oh, he wants to win everything, and he takes delight in winning even the smallest bet. And if you remember in the documentary The Last Dance, he was throwing quarters with the traders, and he's just competing on every level, and God bless him. Everybody remembers that and reveres that to a large degree, and everyone always says Michael Jordan's the most competitive person they ever met in their life.
Oh man, that's crazy. What a not only wild story, but I think as we're concluding here, it brings us into a great segue into episode 3, as we're gonna have a more dedicated section to Kobe. So we're gonna have some fun Kobe questions for you and that whole era. But I think this is a good place to wrap here for episode 2. And we thank everybody for watching, and we'd love in the comments for you guys to drop any questions for Leonard. Tag Leonard on social media. We'll post his channels, and gotten great feedback from the first episode, and we'd love the fans to get more interactive. And I'm happy to ask some fan questions for you on the next one. But Leonard, thank you so much for the time. And excited to put this out. One last thing, you got to give us your finals prediction, because I don't know when this will come out. The finals would have already been announced, but tell me who you think is going to win the finals and in what games.
Well, I think Dallas is probably going to win one of 3.
Okay. So Dallas, Boston.
It's going to be Dallas, Boston. And then I would say if you had to go Dallas versus Boston, I would say that Dallas is the Cinderella team here, and I think they can win. And the reason I think they can win is that they have two incredible closers. I mean, Luka and Kyrie are amazing closers, and I think the other Dallas role players will be able to step up enough to make it happen for them. And Jaylen Brown and the team that who's the other star on the Celtics? Jaylen, and
Tatum.
then there's
Jason Tatum.
Yeah, they're both really good, but I don't think the combination of those two are quite as potent and powerful as Kyrie and Luka. I mean, they're both really good, but I think Luka they have a little bit of an edge, and that's who I would go with. And my neighbor Mark Cuban, who comes to Manhattan Beach quite a bit, that he has a home near me. He's going to be celebrating. So congrats to him.
I love it. That's funny. Hopefully you could join in with Mark when that happens. But Leonard, thank you so much for joining, and we look forward to getting you on for the next episode.
It looks good. Thank you so much, Vishal. Good talking to you as always. You did a great job.
Definitely. I appreciate it.